In this video, we'll study about the histology of the muscular tissue. The muscle tissue is composed predominantly of the cell that are specialized to shorten in length by contraction. This contraction results in movement. It is in this way that virtually all movements within the body or of the body in relation to the environment are ultimately produced. The muscle tissue is made up of basically of cells that are called as the myocytes. The myocytes are elongated in one direction and therefore they are referred as the muscle fiber. The myocytes are mesodermal in origin and each muscle fiber is an elongated cell which contain the contractile protein, the actin and myosin. The various cell organelles of the muscle fiber have been given special term. The plasma membrane is called as the sarcolemma. The cytoplasm is called as the sarcoplasm. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum is known as the sarcoplasmic reticulum and the mitochondria as the sarcosome. Each muscle fiber is closely invested by connective tissue that is continuous with that around other muscle fibers. Because of this fact, the force generated by different muscle fibers gets added together, and in some cases a movement may be the result of simultaneous contraction of thousands of muscle fibers. The connective tissue framework of the muscle also provides pathway along which the blood vessels and the nerves reach the muscle fibers. Next we'll see the types of muscular tissue. From the histological structure, there are three types. You have the skeletal muscle, the smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle. The skeletal muscle is present mainly in the limbs and in relation to the body wall. Because of its close relationship to the bony skeleton, it is called as the skeletal muscle. When examined under microscope, the fibers of the skeletal muscle shows prominent striations, transverse striations. Hence, it is also called as the striated muscle. The skeletal muscle can normally made to contract under our will, that is the voluntary muscle. The skeletal muscle is supplied by somatic motor nerves. The smooth muscle is present mainly in relation to the viscera. It is seen most typically in the walls of the hollow viscera. As fibers of this variety do not show striations, it is also called as smooth muscle or non-striated muscle. As a rule, the contraction of the smooth muscle is not under our control. Hence, they are involuntary muscle and it is supplied by autonomic nerves. The cardiac muscle is present exclusively in the heart. It resembles the smooth muscle in being involuntary but resembles the striated muscle in that the fibers shows cross striations, and the cardiac muscle has an inherent rhythmic contractility, the rate of which can be modified by autonomic nerves that supply it. Now we'll see about the skeletal muscle in detail. The microscopic features are the skeletal muscle is made up of essentially long cylindrical fibers and the length of the fiber is highly variable. The longest being as much as 30 cm in length and the diameter of the fiber is usually varies considerably between 10 to 60 micrometer. Usually it is 50 to 60 micrometer. And each fiber is really a syncytium with hundreds of nuclei along its length. The nuclei are elongated and they lie at the periphery of the fiber, just under the cell membrane. The cell membrane here it is known as the sarcolemma. The cytoplasm or the sarcoplasm is filled with numerous longitudinal fibrils that are called as the myofibrils. The most striking feature of the skeletal muscle fiber is the presence of transverse striations in them. After staining with hematoxylin, the striations are seen as alternate dark and light bands that stretch across the muscle fiber. The dark band is also called as the A band, while the light band is also called as the I band. A stands for anisotrophic, I stands for isotrophic. In addition to the myofibrils, the sarcoplasm of the muscle fiber contain usual cell organelles that tend to aggregate near the nuclei. The mitochondria are numerous, substantial amounts of glycogen are also present, and the glycogen provides energy for the contraction of the muscle. Next we'll see the organization. Within the muscle, each muscle fiber are arranged in the form of bundle that is called as the fasciculae. The number of fasciculae in a muscle and the number of fibers in each fasciculus are highly variable. In small muscle concerned with fine movements like those of the eyeball and of vocal cords, the fasciculae are delicate and few in number. In large muscle in which the strength of contraction is main consideration, the fasciculae are coarse and numerous. Each muscle fiber is closely invested by connective tissue, and this connective tissue supports the muscle fibers and unites them together. Each muscle fiber is surrounded by delicate connective tissue that is called as endomysium. Individual fasciculae are surrounded by stronger tissue of connective tissue that is called as the perimysium. The entire muscle is surrounded by the connective tissue that is called as the epimysium. At the junction of the muscle with the tendon, the fibers of endomysium, perimysium and epimysium becomes continuous with the fibers of the tendon. Next we'll see the ultrastructure of the striated muscle. The ultrastructure of the muscle fiber can be seen under electron microscope, and each muscle fiber is covered by the plasma membrane that is called as the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma is covered externally on outside by a basement membrane that is called as the external lamina that establish an intimate connection between the muscle fiber and the fibers of the endomysium, that is the collagen and the reticular fibers of the endomysium. The cytoplasm or the sarcoplasm is permeated with myofibrils that pushes the elongated nuclei to the peripheral position. Between the myofibrils, there is an elaborate system of membrane-lined tubes that is called as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Elongated mitochondria, that is the sarcosomes, and the clusters of glycogens are also scattered among the myofibrils. The perinuclear Golgi bodies, the ribosomes, the lysosomes and the lipid vacuoles are also present. Now we'll see the structure of myofibrils. When examined by electron microscope, each myofibril is made up of fine myofilaments. Each myofibril has an alternate light and dark band, that is the I and A bands. Running across the middle of each I band, there is a thin dark line that is called as the Z band or Z band. The middle of the A band is traversed by a lighter band that is called as the H band. Running through the center of the H band is a thin dark line that can be made out, and this is called as the M band. These bands appear to run transversely across the whole muscle fiber because corresponding bands in adjoining myofibrils lie exactly in alignment with one another. The part of the myofibril situated between two consecutive Z bands is called as the sarcomere. So this portion is called as the sarcomere. The cross striations seen in a myofibril under electron microscope is due to the presence of orderly arrangement of myofilaments within it. Next we'll see the structure of myofilaments. There are two types of myofilaments which are present in the skeletal muscle. One is the myosin. So this is the myosin and this is the actin. These are made up of molecules of corresponding protein. Each myosin filament is about 12 nanometer in diameter, while an actin filament is 8 nanometer in diameter. They are therefore referred as thick and the thin filaments respectively. The arrangement of the myosin and the actin filaments in the sarcomere, between the sarcomere is shown here. So here if you see, the myosin filaments are confined to the A band. The width of the band being equal to the length of the myosin filament. The actin filaments are attached to one end of the Z band. From here, they pass through the I band and extend into the outer parts of the A band, where they interdigitate with the myosin filaments. Note, the I band is made up of actin filaments only. The H band. The H band represents the part of the A band into which the actin filaments does not extend. The Z band is really a complicated network at which the actin filaments of adjoining sarcomeres meet. The M band is produced by the fine interconnections between the myosin filaments. When you see the pathological correlation, each muscle fiber contains a cytoskeleton. The fibers of the cytoskeleton are linked to actin fibers. The cytoskeleton is also linked to the external lamina through the glycoprotein present in the cell membrane. The forces generated within the fiber are thus transmitted to the external lamina. The external lamina is in turn attached to the connective tissue fibers around the muscle fiber. A number of proteins are responsible for these linkages. Genetic defects in these proteins can result in abnormalities in the muscle, that is called as the muscle dystrophy. Next we'll see the contraction of the skeletal muscle. During contraction, there is no shortening of the individual thick and the thin myofilaments, but there is an increase in the degree of overlap between the filaments. In an uncontracted myofibrils, the overlap between the actin and the myosin filament is minimal, and during contraction, under the influence of the energy released by the adenosine triphosphate and the calcium released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the fibrils shorten by sliding in of the actin filaments more and more into the interval between the myosin filaments. As a result, the width of the I band decreases, but that of the A band is unchanged. The H band is obliterated in a contracted fibril. So here you can see the contraction. During contraction, the actin filaments, they glide forward and obliterates the H band. So now you can see the contractions. See the contractions. So the I band is reduced, but the H band is obliterated and the A band they remain the same. Next we'll see the other proteins present in the skeletal muscle. There are several other proteins other than the actin and the myosin are present in the muscle. They are the actinin. So the actinin present in the region of the Z band or the Z disc, it binds the tail end of the actin filament to the Z disc. Then you have the myomycin, which is present in the region of M disc or M band. It binds the tail ends of the myosin filaments to the disc. Then you have the titin, links the head of the myosin filaments to the Z disc. This is a long and elastic protein that can lengthen and shorten as required, and it keeps the myosin filament in proper alignment. Then you have the desmin, which is present in the intermediate filaments of the cytoskeleton. It links the myofibrils to each other and also to the cell membrane. Next we'll see the sarcoplasmic reticulum. In the intervals between the myofibrils, the sarcoplasm contains an elaborate system of tubules that are called as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The larger elements of this reticulum run in a plane right angle to the long axis of the myofibrils and forms a ring around each myofibril. At the level of every junction between the A and the I band, the myofibril is encircled by a set of 3 closely connected tubules that constitute the muscle triad. So now we'll see about the muscle triad. For the purpose of description, each such triad can said to be composed of an upper, middle and lower tubule. The upper and the lower tubules of the triad are connected to the tubules of the adjoining triad through a network of smaller tubules. There is one such network opposite the A band and other opposite the I band. So these networks, along with the upper and the lower tubules of the triad, constitute the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This reticulum is closed system of tubes. The middle tube of the triad is an entity independent of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it is called as the centrotubule, and it belongs to what is called as the T system of the membrane. The centrotubule are really formed by the invagination of the sarcolemma into the sarcoplasm. Their lumina are therefore in communication with the exterior of the muscle fiber. The contraction of the muscle is dependent on the release of calcium ions into the myofibril. In a relaxed muscle, these ions are strongly bound to the membranes of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. When a nerve stimulus reaches a motor end plate, the sarcolemma is depolarized. The wave of depolarization is transmitted to the interior of the muscle fiber through the centrotubule. As a result of this wave, the calcium ions are released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the myofibrils, causing their contraction. Next we'll see the types of the skeletal muscle fibers. From morphological, histochemical and functional point of view, the muscle fibers are of two types. They are red muscle fiber and white muscle fiber. The color of the red fibers is due to the presence in the sarcoplasm of a pigment called myoglobin, and this pigment is similar but not identical with hemoglobin. It is present also in the white fibers but in much lesser quantity. As compared to the white fibers, the contraction of the red fibers is relatively slow. Hence, the red fibers are also called as the slow twitch fibers or type 1 fibers. The white fibers are called as the fast twitch fibers or type 2 fibers. In addition to the color and the speed of contraction, there are several other differences between the red and the white fibers. The red fibers are narrower than the white fibers. Relative to the volume of the myofibrils, the sarcoplasm is more abundant. Probably because of this fact, the myofibrils and the striations are less well defined and the nuclei are not always at the periphery but may extend deeper into the fiber. The mitochondria are more numerous in the red fibers, but the sarcoplasmic reticulum is less extensive. The sarcoplasm contains more glycogen. The capillary bed around the red fibers is richer than around the white fibers. Although the red fibers contract slowly, their contraction is more sustained and they fatigue less easily. They predominate in the so-called the postural muscle, which have to remain contracted over long periods, while the white fibers predominate in the muscles responsible for sharp active movements. The type 2 fibers may be divided into type 2A and type 2B, the two types differing in their enzyme content and in the chemical nature of their myosin molecules. Next we'll see the blood vessels and the lymphatics. The skeletal muscle is richly supplied with the blood vessels, and the main artery to the muscle enters the muscles at the neurovascular hilus. Several other arteries may enter the muscle at its end or other places along its length. The arteries form a plexus in the epimysium and in the perimysium and end in a network of capillaries that surrounds each muscle fiber. This network is richer in the red muscle than in the white muscle. The veins leaving the muscle accompany the artery. The lymphatic plexus extend into the epimysium and the perimysium and not into the endomysium. Next we'll see the innervation of the skeletal muscle. The nerve supply of a muscle enters along the neurovascular hilus. This hilus is usually situated near the origin of the muscle than the insertion. After entering the muscle, the nerve breaks up into many branches that run through the connective tissue of the perimysium and the endomysium to reach each muscle fiber. The nerve fibers supplying the skeletal muscles or the axons arising from the large neurons in the anterior gray column of the spinal cord, and these are alpha efferents that have a large diameter and they are myelinated. Because of the repeated branching of its axon, one anterior gray column neuron may supply many muscle fibers, all of which contract when this neuron fires. One anterior gray column neuron and the muscle fibers supplied by it constitute one motor unit. The number of muscle fibers in one motor unit is variable. The units are smaller where precise control of muscular action is required, as in the ocular muscle, and much larger in the limb muscle where force of contraction is more important. The strength with which a muscle contracts at a particular moment depends on the number of motor units that are activated. The junction between the muscle fiber and the nerve terminal that is supplied, it is highly specialized, is called as the motor end plate. Apart from the alpha efferent, the muscle also receives smaller myelinated gamma efferent that arises from the gamma neurons in the ventral gray column of the spinal cord, and these fibers supply the special muscle fibers that are present within the sensory receptors that are called as the muscle spindles. So these special muscle fibers are called as the intrafusal fibers. The nerves to the muscles also carry autonomic fibers that supply the smooth muscles present in the walls of the blood vessels. Next we'll see the structure of the motor end plate. In most common type of neuromuscular junction, as the motor neurons enters the skeletal muscle, next we'll see the structure of the motor end plate. It is the most common type of neuromuscular junction. As the motor neuron enters the skeletal muscle, it branches many times. The number of branches depends upon the size of the motor unit. On reaching the muscle fiber, the nerve loses its myelin sheath and breaks up into number of branches. Each branch is a naked axon terminal and forms the neural element of the motor end plate. The axon is slightly expanded here. At the site of the motor end plate, the surface of the muscle fiber is slightly elevated to form the muscular element of the plate that is referred as the sole plate. The naked axon terminal and the sole plate together forms the motor end plate. In the region of the motor end plate, the axon terminals are lodged in the grooves in the sarcolemma, covering the sole plate. Between the axolemma and the sarcolemma, there is a narrow gap of 40 nanometer, which is occupied by various protein that forms the basal lamina. It follows that there is no continuity between the axoplasm and the sarcoplasm. The axon terminals are lodged in the grooves in the sarcolemma covering the sole plate. This groove is seen as a semicircular depression. So this depression is called as the primary cleft. The sarcolemma in the floor of the primary cleft is thrown into numerous small folds, resulting in the formation of secondary clefts or subneural cleft. In the region of the sole plate, the sarcoplasm of the muscle fiber is granular and it contains the number of nuclei, and it is rich in mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi complexes. The axon terminal also rich in mitochondria, and each terminal contains the vesicles, similar to those seen in the presynaptic Bautins. The vesicles contain the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. The acetylcholine is released when the nerve impulses reach the neuromuscular junction. It initiates a wave of depolarization in the sarcolemma, resulting in the contraction of the entire muscle fiber. Thereafter, the acetylcholine is quickly destroyed by the enzyme acetylcholine esterase. The presence of acetylcholine receptor has been demonstrated in the sarcolemma of the sole plate. When you see the clinical correlation, a condition that is called as myasthenia gravis is a neuromuscular disorder of autoimmune origin in which the acetylcholine receptor in the motor end plate of the muscles are damaged. The myasthenia gravis may be found at any age, but adult women are affected more often than adult men in a ratio of 3:1. The condition presents clinically with muscular weakness and fatigability initially in the ocular muscle, but later spreads to involve the trunks and the limbs. Next we'll see the muscle spindle. These are spindle-shaped sensory end organs located within the striated muscle. The spindle is bounded by a fusiform connective tissue capsule forming an external capsule within which a few specialized muscle fibers are present. So these are called as the intrafusal fibers, in contrast to the extrafusal muscle fibers that constitute the main bulk of the muscle. Each spindle contains 6 to 14 intrafusal fibers, and each intrafusal fibers is surrounded by an internal capsule of flattened fibroblast and collagen. The intrafusal fibers contain several nuclei that are located near the middle of the fiber. In some fibers, this region is dilated, and this is called as the nuclear bag fibers. In other intrafusal fibers, the nuclei lie in a single row without dilatation, and this is called as the nuclear chain fibers. The nuclear bag fibers are considerably large than the nuclear chain fibers. They extend beyond the capsule and gain attachment to the endomysium of the extrafusal fibers. The nuclear chain fibers, on the other hand, they remain within the capsule to which their ends are attached. Each muscle spindle is innervated by sensory as well as motor nerves. The sensory nerves are two types, primary and secondary. The motor innervation of intrafusal fiber is mainly by the axons of the gamma neurons located in the ventral gray column of the spinal cord. The sensory endings respond to stretch. The primary sensory endings are rapidly adapting, while the secondary endings are slow adapting. The spindle provides information to the CNS about the extent and the rate of change in the length of the muscle. The nuclear bag fibers are stimulated by rapid changes, while the nuclear chain fibers react more slowly. The contraction of the intrafusal fibers makes the spindle more sensitive to stretch. Next, we'll see the pathological correlation. Rhabdomyoma and rhabdomyosarcoma are the benign and the malignant tumors respectively of the striated muscle. The rhabdomyoma is a rare benign soft tissue tumor which is predominantly located in the head and neck, most often in the upper neck, tongue, larynx and pharynx. The rhabdomyosarcoma is much more common soft tissue tumor than rhabdomyoma, and it is the commonest soft tissue sarcoma in children and young adults. It is highly malignant tumor arising from the rhabdomyoblast in varying stages of differentiation with or without demonstrable cross striations. Next, we'll see about the cardiac muscle. The cardiac muscle has many similarities with the skeletal muscle, but there are important differences as well. When you see the similarities between the cardiac and the skeletal muscle, like the skeletal muscle, the cardiac muscle is made up of elongated fibers within which there are numerous myofibrils. The myofibrils shows the transverse striation similar to those of the skeletal muscle. You have A, I, Z and H bands can be made out with the striations. The connective tissue framework and the capillary network around the cardiac muscle fibers are similar to those in the skeletal muscle. With an electron microscope, the myofibrils of the cardiac muscle have the same structure as those of the skeletal muscle, and it is made up of actin and the myosin filaments. A sarcoplasmic reticulum, the T system of centrotubules and numerous mitochondria and other organelles are also present. Next, we'll see the difference between the cardiac and the skeletal muscle. The fibers of the cardiac muscle, they do not run strict parallel formation, but they branch and anastomose with the fibers to form a network. Each fiber of the cardiac muscle is not multinucleated. The syncytium, as in the skeletal muscle, but it is a chain of cardiac muscle each having its own nucleus. Each myocyte is about 80 micrometer long and 15 micrometer broad. The nucleus of each myocyte is located centrally, whereas in the skeletal muscle it is located peripherally. The sarcoplasm of the cardiac myocyte is abundant and contains numerous large mitochondria. The myofibrils are relatively few. At places, the myofibrils merge with each other. As a result of these factors, the myofibrils and the striations of the cardiac muscle are not as distinct as those in the skeletal muscle. In this respect, the cardiac muscle is closer to the red variety of the skeletal muscle than to the white variety. Other similarities with the red muscles are the presence of significant amount of glycogen and of myoglobin and the rich density of capillary network around the fibers. With the electron microscope, it is seen that the sarcoplasmic reticulum is much less prominent than in the skeletal muscle. The centrotubules of the T system lie opposite the Z band and not at the junction of A and the I band as in the skeletal muscle. The tubules are much wider than in the skeletal muscle. Typical triads are not present. They are often replaced by dyads having one T tubule and one tube of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. With the light microscope, the junctions between the adjoining cardiac myocytes are seen as the dark staining transverse line running across the muscle fibers. So these lines are called as the intercalated disc. Sometimes these discs do not run straight across the fiber, but they are broken into number of steps. The disc always lie opposite the I band. The cardiac muscle is involuntary and it is innervated by autonomic nerves, and nerve endings terminate near the cardiac myocyte, but motor end plates are not seen. The isolated cardiac myocyte, they contract spontaneously in a rhythmic manner. In an intact heart, the rhythm of the contraction is determined by a pacemaker located in the sinoatrial node. From here, the impulse spread to the entire heart through a conducting system which is made up of special kind of cardiac muscle. From the above, it is well appreciated that the nerve supply is not necessary for the contraction of the cardiac muscle. The nervous influences, however, affect the strength and the rate of contraction of the heart. Next, we'll see about the smooth muscle. The smooth muscle is also known as the non-striated or involuntary muscle. It is made up of long spindle-shaped cells with a broad central part and the tapering ends. The nucleus, which is oval and elongated, lies in the central part of the cells. The length of the smooth muscle cells is highly variable between 15 micrometer to 500 micrometer. In light microscope, it appears to have indistinct longitudinal striations, but there are no transverse striations. The smooth muscle fibers are usually aggregated to form bundles or fasciculi. When you see the thick central part of one cell is opposite to the thin tapering ends of the adjoining cells. The aggregation of smooth cells into fascicle and layers is facilitated by the fact that each myocyte is surrounded by the network of delicate fibers that holds the myocytes together. The fibers between the individual muscle fibers, that is myocytes, becomes continuous with more abundant connective tissue that separates the fasciculi or layers of the smooth muscle fibers. When you see the ultrastructure, each smooth muscle cell is bounded by a plasma membrane, and outside the plasma membrane there is an external lamina to which the plasma membrane is adherent. The connective tissue fibers are attached to the lamina through special protein. The adjacent smooth muscle cells communicate through the gap junctions. The longitudinal striations seen in the light microscope are due to the presence of delicate myofilaments. These myofilaments are composed mainly of the protein, actin and the myosin, but they do not have highly ordered arrangement as in the striated muscle. The actin filaments are also different from those in the skeletal muscles. The troponin is not present. Apart from the myofibril, the sarcoplasm also contains the mitochondria, Golgi complex and some granular endoplasmic reticulum, free ribosomes and intermediate filaments. A sarcoplasmic reticulum similar to those in the skeletal muscle is present, but it is not as well developed. The numerous invagination, that is known as the caveolae, resembling the endocytic vesicles are seen near the surface of each myocyte, but no endocytosis occurs here. When you see the contraction of the smooth muscle, the mechanism of the contraction of the smooth muscle is different from that of the skeletal muscle. The myosin is chemically different than in the skeletal muscle. It binds to the actin only if its light chain is phosphorylated. This phosphorylation of myosin is necessary for the contraction of the smooth muscle. As compared to the skeletal muscle, the smooth muscle needs very little ATP for contraction. The mechanism regulating the flow of calcium ion into the smooth muscle are different from those for the skeletal muscle. The caveolae presents on the surface of the smooth muscle, which plays a role in the regulation of the flow of the calcium ion. The actin and the myosin form bundles that are attached to both ends to a point on the cell membrane. These are called as the anchoring points or the focal density. When the muscle contracts, these points are drawn together to each other, and this convert the elongated smooth muscle cell into an oval one. When you see the distribution of the smooth muscle fibers, the smooth muscle is seen most typically in the walls of the hollow viscera, including the stomach, intestine, urinary bladder, uterus. It is present in the walls of several structures that are in the form of narrow tubes, arteries, veins, bronchi, ureter, different ducts, the uterine tubes and the ducts of several glands. The muscles that constrict and dilate the pupil are made up of smooth muscle. Some of the muscle which is present in the orbit, the orbitalis, in the upper eyelid, the Muller's muscle, and in the prostate and the skin of the scrotum, the Darter's muscle, and in the skin, the delicate bundles of smooth muscle are present in relation to the hair follicle, and these bundles are called as the erector pili muscle. When you see the variation in the arrangement of the smooth muscle fibers may be arranged in a variety of ways depending on the functional requirement. In some organ, the smooth muscle is arranged in the form of two distinct layers, an inner circular layer and outer longitudinal layer. Within each layer, the fasciculae lie parallel to each other. Such an arrangement allows the peristaltic movement to take place for the propulsion of the content along the tube. In some organ, like ureter, the arrangement of the layer may be reversed, the longitudinal layer being internal to the circular one. In other situations, there may be three layers. You have an inner and outer longitudinal with a circular layer in between. Example, urinary bladder and vas deferens. In some region, like urinary bladder and uterus, the smooth muscle is arranged in layers, but the layers are not distinctly demarcated from each other. Even within the layers, the fasciculae tend to run in various directions and they form a network. In some tubes, like bile duct, the Thick layer of circular muscle may surround a segment of the tube, forming a sphincter. The contraction of the sphincter occludes the tube. In the skin and in some other places, the smooth muscle occurs in the form of narrow bands. When you see the innervation, the smooth muscle is innervated by autonomic nerves, both sympathetic and parasympathetic. The two have opposite effect. For example, in the iris, the parasympathetic stimulation causes constriction of the pupil and the sympathetic stimulation causes dilatation. It may be noted that the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nerves may cause contraction of the muscles at some sites and relaxation at other sites. Next, we'll see the blood vessels and the lymphatics. The blood vessels and the lymphatics are present in the smooth muscle, but the density of the blood vessel is much less than in the skeletal muscle. When you see the pathological correlation, all varieties of the muscle can hypertrophy when exposed to greater stress. The hypertrophy takes place by enlargement of existing fibers and not by the formation of new fibers. The skeletal muscle hypertrophy with exercise. The cardiac muscle hypertrophies if the load of a chamber of the heart is increased for any reason. An example is the hypertrophy of the muscle in the wall of left ventricle in hypertension. The hypertrophy of smooth muscle is seen most typically in the uterus when the myocytes may increase from a length of 15 to 20 micrometer at the beginning of pregnancy to 500 micrometer towards the end of the pregnancy. The smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle have very little capacity for regeneration. Any defects produced by injury or disease is usually repaired by formation of fibrous tissue. The skeletal muscle can undergo some degree of regeneration. They cannot divide to form new fibers. However, satellite cells presence in relation to the skeletal muscle just deep to the external lamina can give rise to new muscle fibers. The satellite cells are regarded as persisting myoblasts. When large segments of a muscle are destroyed, the gap is filled by a fibrous tissue. Next, we'll see the myoepithelial cells. Apart from the muscle, myoepithelial cells shows the presence of contractile protein, actin and myosin. The myoepitheliocytes or myoepithelial cells are present in close relation to the secretory elements of some glands. They help to squeeze the secretion out of the secreting elements. The myoepithelial cells may be stellate, forming a basket around the acini, or may be fusiform. The myoepitheliocytes are seen in the salivary gland, the mammary gland and sweat glands, and these cells are of ectodermal origin. With the electron microscope, they are seen to contain the actin and myosin filaments, and they can be localized histochemically because they contain the protein desmin that is specific to muscle. The myoepithelial cells are innervated by autonomic nerves. Next, we'll see the clinical correlation. Excessive activity of the smooth muscle is responsible for many symptoms. The constriction of the bronchi leads asthma, and the spasm of the smooth muscle can give rise to severe colic pain that may originate in the intestine, that is intestinal colic, from the ureter which causes renal colic, from the bile duct causes biliary colic. So these symptoms can be relieved by the drug that causes a relaxation of the smooth muscle. Some diseases of the muscle referred to muscular dystrophy are caused by genetic defects in the protein that link fibers of the cytoskeleton to the external lamina. One such protein is dystrophin, and it is absent in associated with the disease that is called as the Duchenne muscular dystrophy.